So where I left off was with Captain Marvel, better known to a lot of you as Shazam. And in that video, I talked about the fact that Captain Marvel, he really captured the male power fantasy, especially for young boys. Well, guess what? Young boys are not the only ones who have power fantasies. There are young girls as well. And a man by the name of William Moulton Marston, he recognized this. And he wanted to do something about it. So he came up with his own superhero. And that was, of course, Wonder Woman. Now, basically, Marston, he was a feminist. Now, that word means different things to different people. I consider myself a feminist. For me, that means that men and women should be treated equally. However, for Marston, he was more about completely flipping the script and having women be dominant, and he thought that men all secretly wanted and desired to be dominated by women, and realized this is the 30s and 40s. He lived a very unconventional life. He lived with his wife and his mistress, a polyamorous relationship. So very unconventional, some very unconventional ideas. But anyway, he created her because he realized that little girls, they weren't really gravitating towards the superheroes like Superman and Batman all that much. And he's like, well, no wonder. They've got nothing that they can relate to. And so that's why he created Wonder Woman. So she was created very deliberately and very specifically to give little girls someone that would make them feel empowered. And I believe he managed to successfully do that. Before I get into that, let me talk a little bit about her early appearances. I'm not going to go too far into this now. It's going to come up a little bit later when I talk about the hysteria around comics in the 1950s. But Marston was also really into being tied up. Bondage is the word. And if you look at some of the old Wonder Woman comics, you will see, as you can see in some of those images there, you can see her getting tied up by her enemies. In fact, her original weakness was that she would lose all of her superpowers when a man tied her up. And so she would have to, eventually get free from the bonds. And then, of course, she's got her magic lasso and, would tie him up. A lot of people getting tied up. There were some people. Now, if you're a little kid and you're watching this, you don't think anything of it. It seems, okay, whatever. People are getting tied up. So what? But adults were sort of realizing, okay, there's something going on here. And they received complaints about it. But when Marston was instructed by the publisher to have less bondage, fewer people being tied up, he just put more of it in there. Anyway, that's a whole other thing, and I don't really think the most interesting thing about Wonder Woman, but let me just leave it at that and say an interesting little bit of coincidence. William Moulton Marston is also the inventor of the lie detector. And so a nice little coincidence because, as many of you probably know, if Wonder Woman ties you up with her lasso, you are compelled to tell the truth. And I know, of course, lie detectors aren't really that reliable, but that's not the point. So, I mean, interesting little bit of coincidence there. And she hasn't had the weakness of losing her powers when a man ties her up for some time. I don't know when they got rid of it, but it was way before my lifetime. Anyway, woman, much like Batman and Superman, essentially the basic idea of her always looks the same, but she's had a few variations in her looks. When we think of Wonder Woman, even people who haven't read any of the comics, or maybe maybe they've seen the old TV show, maybe the movie. Most people seem to know that she's got the bracelets that deflect the bullets. She also has the invisible jet, and of course the lasso of truth that I was just talking about. Her story is also deeply rooted in Greek mythology, specifically the legend of the Amazons. And on the picture on the right, in the 1970s, they were trying to revamp Wonder Woman, and the idea was to have her lose her superpowers and have her more sort of a martial arts expert / secret agent, which was kind of the popular thing at the time. A lot of fans did not react well to this. A lot of feminists especially, they're like, you take this really powerful woman and you take away her powers? What, are you kidding? You know, you wouldn't think of doing that to Superman, would you? And yeah, that's a legit complaint. And even if those comics were good comics and good stories, Wonder Woman is a little bit more, she's too important to do that to. It might be interesting to take another superhero, and, you know, it can even be a female superhero, and have her really super powerful and then have her lose her powers. And there's probably a good story out of that. But Wonder Woman, much like, you know, our first characters here, Batman, Superman, and Captain Marvel / Shazam, she means too much to people. She's too much of a symbol to do that with. So, of course, they eventually brought her back to her iconic look and her powers. Now, here's the thing when it comes to Wonder Woman. When the most recent movie came out, what was really cool for me is, as a fan of comics and as a fan of superheroes, that I, at the theater, oftentimes, I know this is changing quite a bit, but oftentimes when I would see superhero movies, it was mostly men and boys there. There'd be some women, but usually they were with their boyfriends, husbands. And I know, you know, lots of women like superheroes. Again, this is more so now. I've been reading comics and I've been into superheroes. I mean, I'm 46 now. I've been following it very closely since I was 12. So do the math on that. But when I was a fan as a much younger person, it was really kind of a boys' club. And thankfully that's changing. But I think what really, you know, represented or showed me that change was when I went to see the Wonder Woman movie, because I saw just groups of women there. And I was surrounded by women. I mean, I had my wife sitting next to me, but there were some women to the side and some women behind. And there are some very, you know, emotional moments in there. And it was great to see my wife, who, you know, normally likes superhero movies, but to see her get a bit emotional with it. And I just kind of felt the energy in the room. And for me, this is great because I don't want this to be a boys' club. I want this to be an everybody club. I love the fact that all these women got to enjoy something that I've been enjoying my entire life, that they've been able to feel this. So here's the thing. It's a bit problematic because right now I'm mansplaining to you the appeal of Wonder Woman. I don't think I've said anything, you know, horrible or, you know, controversial, but still, it's a guy saying it. So I put out to my women friends on social media, I said, hey, what does Wonder Woman mean to you? And I got some great feedback. I'll just read a bit, so forgive my male voice, but these were women who wrote this. Denise said, Wonder Woman has always been the ultimate symbol of female badassery. I have a Wonder Woman water bottle on my desk at work. I feel like it represents my ability to kick ass and take names as a single mom with a high-stress job. It gives me the I've got this vibe, even when I feel like I'm drowning. Valerie says that Wonder Woman is someone to aspire to, strong, powerful, yet good-hearted woman. I actually find myself thinking of her, given what I'm going through when times get rough. Bethany says, I have a Wonder Woman mug I use on my harder days to remind me what a badass I am, and that to just keep moving through it is the ultimate way to kick butt. Also to remind myself that I am clearly an Amazonian princess, just stunted in growth. Susie says, Wonder Woman is a princess and a warrior. She is everything that a girl of any age aspires to be. She stands up for truth. She stands up for people. Wonder Woman taught me that the comic heroes can wear star-spangled spankies and be power personified. Donna says, in my film community in London, my film mentor encourages us, male and female alike, to imagine oneself as Wonder Woman when faced with the many common obstacles in trying to complete a film project. And lots of great stuff here. Janelle says, as a woman who is pretty passionate about representation of women in media, I love this movie, referring, of course, to the most recent Wonder Woman movie. First of all, we witnessed so much awesomeness amongst the Amazon women. Strong, close female bonds, women who empower each other to reach their full potential, and women who cheer each other on, competing against each other. We see women willing to sacrifice themselves for the sake of others, and willing to face hard and heartbreaking situations with bravery, while also displaying very real emotions. A few more. Lydia says, seeing powerful women made me feel powerful too. Christine says, she was with the big boys on the Justice League and held her own without the gender issue coming up. She had skills they needed. And Leona says, she saves Steve in every episode. She's referring to the old 1970s TV show. In every episode, and there's never a hint that this is or should be emasculating. She dresses gorgeously, always has her hair pulled back practically by her tiara when fighting, and is a 100% pro-sisterhood. What's not to love? I even managed to get a former student of mine, Natalie. She had some things to say, and I got her to make a video. I will post a link to her entire video, but I'm going to sneak in some of her commentary here.
My mom has a Wonder Woman action figure given to her by my dad. It was perhaps a combination of humor, because there's like a childlike coolness to having superhero gear, be it a t-shirt, a poster, whatever, but it was also a gesture. In her early 30s, my mom went back to school to get her nurse practitioner certification while working part-time as a registered nurse with a 3-year-old, me, and a 16-month-old, my sister. So that's a lot to handle, especially to handle successfully, which she did. This is an important gesture because it's my earliest memory of a woman, my mom, being recognized for her perseverance, hard work, and ambition. As one of her most valued possessions, she keeps it on her desk, and I suppose my knowing the story and knowing that she values that gesture of the action figure, as well as knowing that my dad is super proud of making her happy, instilled in me the lesson that women should be celebrated for all the things, big and small, we set our minds to. I'd like to preface the next sentences by stating all traits described are certainly not exclusive of masculine or feminine folks. We all have all of them. So just putting that out there. Wonder Woman is renowned for her typically masculine attributes of strength, resilience, and agility, but at the same time, she would not choose to enter a physically violent confrontation if it could be avoided with the more typical feminine attributes of logic, compassion, and connection. I think she is the model of female leaders of our world, our real-life world, and our fictional worlds, and I wonder where these worlds would be if communities, states, and countries actively addressed problems with words and an open mind, first and foremost, as we were all taught to do as kids. Hopefully we were all taught that. If not, then this is the moment when you should really take that to heart.